All right, hello, welcome everyone to Star Trek from the Holodeck. This is the Strange New Worlds edition. I am Michael, your host, and in the studio with me to talk about Star Trek is David. Hello, Dave.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, Dave, today we're going to be talking about episode 6 of Strange New Worlds' third season, titled The Sehlat Who Ate Its Tail. The synopsis: Kirk's first day as captain turns disastrous when a scavenger ship seizes the Enterprise. The episode was directed by Valerie Weiss and written, I think I have the information in front of me, Dave. It was written by David Reed and Bill Wolkoff.
Wolkoff.
Why does that sound Wolkoff? Whack off. I think that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. I think that. I'm sorry, Bill. My mistake. Okay, David. So this episode was incredibly entertaining, interesting. It was doing all types of different things at once, which these are the types of episodes I just love. I feel like this is the problems I had with last season are gone.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't increase our episode count, every episode is being used to its fullest.
Oh, yeah.
They are not wasting time.
Because this is the episode, honestly, a lot of us Star Trek fans have been waiting for. Because the whole concept of Strange New Worlds was like a build-up to the original series with Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, Uhura, are all our favorites together on the Enterprise. Ever since me and you have started covering the series, I've always had it in the back of my head, they have to be building up to that. Because, yeah, the main story is Pike and his whole story and how this is Pike's Enterprise. It's not Kirk's Enterprise yet. But we have a characters like Spock and Uhura here that you have to show the progression up to where we know they go.
Uh-huh.
And since day one, I was telling you, I'm waiting to actually see the original crew, because in the back of my head, I'm like thinking, when Strange New Worlds is done, I could see Paramount actually saying, okay, we're going to do the original. We're not going to reboot the whole original series, but we're going to continue it. And we have these actors now set in place in these roles.
Well, they do have, according to the Hollywood Reporter, there is a little bit of hype and validity to this continuing story you're talking about, Dave. It's called Star Trek Year One.
Yes.
And it was discussed at the San Diego Comic-Con by executive producer Akiva Goldsman. So this is coming from an actual powerhouse behind Star Trek currently. And he revealed that Star Trek Year One as the title for this follow-up show to Strange New Worlds. And he is the co-showrunner currently, if people are unaware, and executive producer of Strange New Worlds. And him, along, I can't talk, David, but him along with Harry Alonzo Myers are floating a potential series with Paul Wesley attached called Star Trek Year One. So after using some of his stage time to hype Year One, executive producer Akiva Goldsman clarified with the Hollywood Reporter that his wish for a follow-up show to Strange New Worlds is so far only that. Let me just be very clear. It doesn't exist. It's an aspiration. It's a hope on our part to be able to continue telling stories that would kiss the end of Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
That said, it's clear that he has put thought into what the show would be. Strange New Worlds ends on Jim Kirk's first day of work as captain of the Enterprise, and if we call Where No Man Has Gone Before the second pilot, there's space and time and relationships and crew that exist that have been untold, and the untold stories of Kirk's Enterprise. So that's where we would love to situate the show. Not really trying to dive into the continuity that we've seen, but in that gap in between.
Yeah, to show the buildup of our crew, our official Enterprise crew coming together.
Yeah.
And this is something that this episode really did that very well, and surprisingly very subtly.
Well,
because if you're not a longtime Star Trek fan, you're probably just seeing like a typical, I guess you could say, Star Trek episode. But as a Star Trek fan, we're seeing little nods to like certain relationships that we didn't think we'd be able to see again.
Yeah.
You know, Spock and Kirk.
Well, this is basically Kirk's first foray into what you would say is his, or I should say, what's the best way to say that? This is essentially what we got in this episode was a proto version of his Enterprise crew, because you had all the people that are in fact on his ship during the original series. The only one we're missing is Sulu at this point,
and Chekhov.
And Dr. McCoy. Chekhov doesn't come until the second season anyway. So
That's true.
So I don't know if we'll ever see him in Strange New Worlds, because he was
his character was like super young.
Yeah, I mean, they could find easy ways to bring him in, but it's unnecessary. I think the people we'll see by the end of Strange New Worlds is probably Dr. McCoy and Sulu himself.
Yeah.
So it's interesting what they did with the episode, because when you look back at the season at large, you know, I said during our last discussion that this season isn't wasting time. It's relying on what was laid before, so that the people who are looking for those little connections can see it. And if you find them, it is really making this season feel far more complete than previous seasons, despite the low episode count.
Yes.
For example, during the Space Adventure Hour, that episode was largely about the show's birth, right?
Yes.
This episode is largely about the concept and birth of the Enterprise crew as we know it.
Yeah.
And within the text origin, not just about television, but about Kirk, Spock, Scotty, Uhura, and Chapel beginning to coalesce as the original series team.
Yeah.
And I really liked what they did with it, because my fears with this is that they're going to undermine who Kirk is. They're going to try to put a new, fresh coat of 2025 trendy views on Kirk, because we know that his personality, meaning not William Shatner, but Kirk, his bravado, his confidence, is largely looked down on in today's environment.
Oh, absolutely.
People feel like that type of masculinity is toxic.
Yes.
So I was nervous about an episode like this where they would kind of whittle away the rough edges. And those rough edges, his overconfidence, his willingness to take risks, that's part of who Captain Kirk is. And even though they kind of demonized that type of behavior, they fixed it by the end of the episode, because it's not about what he was trying to do. It's about understanding what he's capable of and whether or not he can reflect that type of confidence on the bridge. This was not about his captain's decisions. Then it was more about, or I should say, it was less about the decisions that he makes on the bridge and more about the confidence he must have in making those decisions, because he's not just responsible for lives, he's also responsible for wrangling in a crew.
Yeah.
What I always say back in my early corporate days when I used to work for corporations and I used to train managers, general managers, to run corporate locations for this business I worked at, the first thing I would say in management training was, a good leader knows they're a good leader because when they turn around, people are following them. You don't always need to tell them what to do. You lead by example and they follow. And that is what was made clear by the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And I also liked it because Kirk doesn't captain by diplomacy. He doesn't captain with other people. Picard had a ready room. Pike is the most democratic.
Yeah.
There we go. He's the most democratic captain that we've ever seen, where he literally on the bridge will talk to people and try to get their input and make decisions on the bridge oftentimes. That's very different than we've seen before.
Yeah.
Kirk does not captain by democratic means. He is the sole authority on that bridge. Now, on the bridge, he's the sole authority. But oftentimes, what have we seen him do when something occurs that he must think about? He doesn't go to Uhura or Scotty or Chekhov or Sulu and say, what must I do? Like, what advice do you have? He comes with the device and dictates what needs to be done. And they say yes or no, it can or cannot be done. But where he gets his assistance, his confidence, his advice is from two people.
Yes.
It's Spock and McCoy, and it's always done in private in either his quarters or some other room on the Enterprise. He's the type of captain that doesn't show those types of vulnerabilities, and there's only two people that he shows those vulnerabilities to, and it's always been Spock and McCoy. So when the writers in this episode had Spock be the actual one to bring him back to his senses and give him the confidence to lead that he needs, it makes perfect sense that it's Spock.
Well, because it's kind of like what you were saying is like Kirk is the type of person, not just the type of captain, but the type of person that eternalizes everything.
Yes.
He doesn't go around, and yeah, in today's world we try to, I guess the word you used is pretty accurate, is demonize. We try to demonize this quote unquote stoic mannerisms that we see that people call, oh, it's toxic masculinity, when in actuality it's a way of thinking. People think differently from everybody. Everyone reacts and does things based on their own machinations. And the way that Kirk does it is he internalizes it and basically tries to figure it out in his own head, his own logic puzzle. That's what Spock represents to Kirk. It's this person that is completely logical who will look at Kirk and say, this is what logically you need to think about.
Yeah.
It's the dynamic that I've always loved in the original series, where it's like Spock represents the logic side for Kirk. And if you notice, in episodes where Kirk has to be more emotional and tap to empathy, he's talking to McCoy.
He has confidants for that.
Yeah, he has
and
confidants
that is
for that.
McCoy and Spock.
Now, currently, right now, McCoy's not in the series. So in the very end, when he's talking to Pike, he's more searching empathy, especially when he makes the comment that I feel for those 7,000 people. And it's kind of like, that's something he would say to McCoy.
Yeah, and it also is just a great way to solidify his legacy as being incredibly human. Incredibly human. He's imperfect. He may make decisions that are rash at times, but at the end of the day, it was his decision, and you got to learn to stand by those decisions. That's what Pike's point was, and I wouldn't even consider that a confidant necessarily. This isn't. That's a different dynamic. That's a different type of chemistry. That's more of a mentor.
Mentor, yeah.
A mentor apprentice type of relationship where the older, more experienced captain is giving him advice, and the advice Pike gave him was so powerful and so spot on. It's not about regretting your decisions, but knowing that those decisions that you do make, you will have to live with for the rest of your life. And man, that comment, and I'm paraphrasing here, I really wish I had the line in front of me, but when he essentially told Kirk that the fact that we are having these conversations, the fact that you are even talking about this right now is a deterrent to become the very thing you fear, because you killed essentially 7,000 people and you regret it. That's a good thing. That's you analyzing, internalizing, like you said, what had just happened. And the fact that you're thinking about it is the reason why you will never become those people. There is no fear that you must have to think that you will become just like them, cold, callous, a shell of your former self, someone who has relinquished their humanity and have become wholly something other than human. That's the point, that we make decisions. You must stand by those decisions. And by standing by those decisions and remembering them, you will make sure not to make those callous decisions that you might be afraid that you will now make.
And think about the really awesome way that ties in narratively to Pike. Since day one, what is the whole story of Pike? Coming to terms with his destiny.
Yeah.
Because of the decisions he's made. And what is he telling Kirk? Essentially, Pike has learned at this point that he accepts his choices because he understands that the choices he made, may lead to something horrible for his destiny, but it's also the understanding that it's for a quote-unquote greater good.
Yeah. The only captain to ever escape his destiny is Captain Kirk. So
actually, yes, you're right. because, well, Cisco actually just embraced it. I mean, come on, you're gonna become part of the prophets. Go ahead.
But that was kind of his destiny. His entire life was deterministic. He was born because of his purpose. If you remember, one of the prophets inhabited a human woman in order to give birth to the Messiah, which is Cisco. I fucking love it. And yet it does in fact work. So, all right. So bringing it back to Kirk, I felt like there were some people trying to figure out like what the point of this human crew was aboard this scavenger ship. And I was one of them, but I thought about it overnight, and it's far simpler than people may think.
I like your explanation because I had the same questions.
Okay, so they characterize these people in the scavenger ship as a group of humans who fled to space after World War III.
Mm-hmm.
They represented the most optimistic of humanity, and they went searching for something better. But what happened to them is the point of the episode, and it parallels with Kirk and the discussion that Pike had with him. These people were the best of the best. They are essentially proto-Starfleet, right?
Yes.
And what happened to them? As time went by, you get the idea that in order to survive, they sacrificed their values, their ethics, their morality. And over the course of hundreds of years, they became a shell of what they were, no longer even recognizing themselves as human. That was the point.
Yes.
And when you connect that to Kirk and how he killed, this is very strong, but that's what he did. In a moment of self-defense, he ended the lives of 7,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between him and these people. Don't forget what you did to survive. Remember this. Remember that you took the lives of 7,000 people. And by remembering it and accepting it, you will not make the same mistake that they themselves made, losing their humanity. That's the point.
Yeah.
And I think it's this is probably, David, we keep saying this a lot now, but this probably is one of the most Star Trek episodes of all Star Trek episodes, because this feels in so many different ways, especially with the larger-than-life villain, this scavenger ship. This felt like this could have been produced in the late 1960s.
Oh, in the TOS era?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Especially my favorite line is what Pike says to Kirk. And I have it written down here. It's short. It's basically, he says, empathy is not conditional.
There you go.
And he basically, it wraps up. It felt like the TOS time when
they would all talk philosophically.
And then Kirk would have this one-liner.
Yep.
Or Spock would have this one-liner to kind of wrap up the message that that certain character is trying to convey to either Kirk or to Spock or to McCoy. And Pike is the one who says it, where it's understandable why Kirk is torn about this because, and number one,
because 7,000 human lives,
lives, and he made the decision to end them. And
that's also part of the narrative itself. It wasn't that he decided to end them. He made a decision to save his crew.
Exactly.
And in making that decision, he realized what he had done. That 7,000 human lives were ended because of his decision to save his own crew. So it's about reconciling that. And just like Pike said, like that line you brought about empathy, because he feels this way and because he's questioning that, shows that by the very questions that he's tormenting himself with, shows all of us just how good he is.
Yeah. And that's it connects to one of the qualities I've always said Kirk as a captain has. He is the type of person that the needs of it goes back to, as funny as it sounds, a lot of old Star Trek movies
is built on that idea.
The idea for Kirk is the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many.
The needs of the many.
No, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Right.
And it's like that whole moment when I loved when Kirk takes that moment after Pike gives him that, and you can kind of see the seeds being planted in his brain
Yeah.
to make him into the captain we all know he becomes.
It's fun, dude.
It really
it
is.
was a fun episode. It was great to see Paul Wesley really get to be Kirk. Like this is the Kirk we
I think this is the first time we got to see him as Kirk.
I love that we keep getting a little bit. I was very hesitant. If you remember when it was announced that Paul Wesley was cast as Kirk, I wasn't like upset because I like Paul Wesley. I was concerned because my position has always been legacy characters hands off. Like there's no if there's no true reason to use them, then don't use them. Let's create new characters and new stories so we don't mistakenly undermine decades of characterization. But so far, they have handled Kirk very delicately, and to see him grow just in 3 seasons, he's been in maybe a handful of episodes at this point.
A handful, yeah.
And this goes back to the incredible writing talent in the Strange New Worlds writing room. The fact that in just 6, maybe 7 episodes of Paul Wesley's Kirk, we're really getting a full picture of a young Kirk that we can understand. Yes, he is not quite the person we all know, but we see the inklings. We see the hints of who he will become. And the way Paul Wesley continues to play him with, at times, the more casual, I don't want to say skip, but he's very light on his feet at times. Early Kirk. Movie Kirk was a little different, but the original series Kirk was more light on his feet. And we saw that in this episode when Paul Wesley was talking, I believe it was to Uhura, and he like kind of skipped off one platform to the next and said, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, that is William Shatner's Kirk from the original series.
Yeah.
So there are great ways they're just connecting these past portrayals to where there's a bit of seamlessness there, where we can buy it. Even though they're different actors, they don't look the same, we as Star Trek fans can take a step back and say, okay, you know what? We get it. We get that this is a recast, and it may not be ideal because we all love William Shatner, but it's working. But it is working. They're doing well.
Exactly. And that's why this is a big statement since we've started watching Strange New Worlds. I honestly think Strange New Worlds does what every single franchise that has done a supposed prequel series, and they do it right.
Yes.
Because all the legacy characters are treated with this slow burn so that we can actually see their progression in kind of like real time. I mean, at this point, Ethan Peck's portrayal of Spock, I think, is relatively regarded highly by a lot of
fans love it.
A lot of fans love Ethan
I do
Peck
too.
At this point,
Yeah.
and so do I. And
he's no Leonard Nimoy. He never will. And Paul Wesley will never be William Shatner. But
they
I will
bring something different to the table.
Yes. I just threw up on the mic. Sorry.
That's all right. But like when it comes to even like the other characters like Uhura and Scotty, the way they've actually handled them during this season has been brilliant. It's not been like in your face, but you actually see what everyone uses the words, the seeds are being planted.
Yeah. People like Uhura and Scotty, I'll say, are a little easier for us to swallow because they weren't major fixtures. I know that's so blasphemous to say nowadays,
but it's honest.
But that's the reality.
That's
like
the reality.
In the original series, they were background players who had their moments.
Yeah.
And same thing in the movies. They had background. They were background players. They weren't background players in the Hollywood sense. They were actual performers, but
they were supporting cast.
They were supporting cast. There you go, David. They were supporting cast, and so when they put Uhura in the show, or Pike in the show, or Scotty in the show, or even Chapel, I'm like, okay, yeah. There's not much they can do to destroy those characters unless they're trying to. With people like Spock, with characters like Spock, maybe even Scotty, and definitely William Shatner's Kirk, or I should just say Captain Kirk, there's risk there.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful. And that's been my fear since Discovery with Spock. When it was announced that Spock was going to become part of the cast of Discovery for one season, I was nervous.
Oh, yeah.
And so far, they have handled Spock's evolution, young Spock's evolution, incredibly well. And they're doing the same thing now with Captain Kirk. I don't have any complaints. Obviously, I have my own, directions. Like, if I was in charge, I would do this. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole other.
That's a whole other thing. But when it comes to actually respecting I guess you could say, the predetermined destiny of these characters,
Yeah.
they're doing a really great job of actually just connecting the dots, but also adding some more context for us, for fans, to say, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense why Kirk acts this way, because we've known him as a character for this long, that he is the type of person to, just like what you alluded to in the very beginning of the show, eternalize everything. He's not like Jean-Luc Picard, where he's like, I need to talk to everybody and I need to, get everyone's input into everything because I'm the captain of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
No, Kirk is the type of person that says, I'm going to go into my room and mope a little because I have to decide a decision that I have to figure out what is the best decision.
Yeah. That's something they also brought attention to. And I'm glad it's subtle and it's not like in your face. Hey guys, remember Kirk's a tactician. You guys have to remember that. And if you're trying to distinguish him from our other captains in a simple, superficial fashion, because obviously there's tons of character aspects, characterizations that we can break down.
Yeah.
But superficially, in the episode, when he runs away, air quotes, he goes to think, what's he doing? He's staring at the 3D chessboard. He is thinking about what to do, because that's what he always does as a captain, even though he may not have had the answers, and because he's young and he's fresh and he's not used to being completely in control of a starship under these types of situations. So I get why he's acting that way, why they wrote him in that way. But it wasn't just him sulking.
Yeah.
He was looking at his 3D chess and contemplate his captain play. He's relying on her gameplay to help him figure out what he's doing. That's essentially the entire point of that scene.
Yes.
Captain Kirk has always been portrayed as an incredible tactician. If you look at all the movies, you look at some of the best episodes, the naval episodes.
Yes.
That's where Kirk shines. He's very quick on his feet, and he is good with strategy.
Wrath of Khan. My favorite point of Wrath of Khan is like when when he has that initial moment with Khan and outmaneuvers him using the code for the other starship.
Yeah.
To defeat Khan, and people say, "Oh, you bought us some time," and all of a sudden Kirk goes, "No, I got caught with my pants down. Now I got to figure out what next to do." And it's like, that's who Kirk is. He's a strategist. He's constantly trying to think of the next maneuver.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about Captain Kirk. People always say, well, what's Captain Kirk's specialty? I see these discussions. Well, Janeway was a scientist. The TNG era kind of changed what each crew member was or were. So now in the TNG era, everybody's essentially a scientist. In the original series, it wasn't quite like that. An engineer was not a scientist. They were a mechanic that got their hands dirty. The way Scotty was portrayed in the original series, he was a grease monkey. He was a mechanic. He wasn't Geordie LaFord.
He wasn't a tech nerd.
Yes. TNG kind of reframed the people that work for Starfleet as being all essentially these geniuses who are super scientists. But Kirk has never been portrayed as that. He's always been portrayed as a guy who does rely on other people's science, like Spock. Mm-hmm. Spock's the science officer. But he was always the tactician. That's what he was. He wasn't the science nerd. He was the strategist. He was the person who had to make the ultimate decisions. So I like that they stayed true to that, even to the point where he did have to ask questions about certain things pertaining to science, because that's just not Kirk.
That's not his thing.
Yeah, he is smart. They've made it a point to say that he has an incredibly high IQ, but high IQ does not equate intellectualism. There's intelligence and then there's intellectualism. They're two different things.
That's what I liked about the scene with Uhura, when all the crew at this point do not trust Kirk. But Uhura makes the comment that I think she says, like, he's still the guy that basically saved her life.
Yeah.
At one point. And it's like, that's the camaraderie that basically starts building, because you have a more human element to their relationships that show the human side of them, going beyond, their quote unquote Starfleet rankings and departments.
Yeah.
Just like it's a fun conversation. I always like is like nitpicking and zeroing in on all the different captains and seeing that one thing that separates them from everybody else. Kirk is the one that, just like you said, he's the strategist. He is the consummate strategist.
Yeah.
He is probably the guy that you want on the front lines to make the decisions on the battlefield. Picard is kind of like the ultimate diplomatic captain. He can talk his way out of stuff.
Well, wasn't that his thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a negotiator.
Yeah.
He's the guy you send in to schmooze and, get to know the alien species and kind of win them over.
Yeah.
And you go through the lines and there always has to be something of the captains to make that one core principle that just unifies them.
Yeah. And that's really the strength of this episode more than anything, Dave, is that it's not only about the connecting of dots and making things make sense and essentially, aligning things with how they will be in the future. Honestly, the strength of the episode is what they did with Kirk.
Yeah.
And for a lot of those fans who are always disgruntled and they say that they don't do anything right, I really like what they did here with Kirk. I mean, there are things that I would have not done. There's a few questionable things that I think just as a fan I have, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I'm a different person that would have done something different. And there are some of those things. Like, I want Kirk to be always Kirk. And maybe that's childish. Maybe that's immature. I didn't necessarily like that they had him walk off the bridge. I didn't like that until I realized what they were trying to do. I was like, really? He's going to sulk and go walk away? I didn't like how that was portrayed because I feel like you could still interpret it that way. And and I don't know if that's what they were intentionally trying to do, but I think some might interpret it that way. Whereas I look at it a little differently, and I think that's what they were trying to do, and I would have streamlined it down and made it feel more solid in that regards, trying to show us that this is how Kirk always captains, off on his own with one or two people helping him make decisions, telling him where he's made mistakes. Spock's always the one that and McCoy, always the one to tell him to get his head out of his ass.
Yes. And it's kind of like one of those moments where I have to tell myself, we are seeing the proto version of these characters. They have to have started from somewhere.
Yeah.
And like seeing Kirk do that, I thought was a genius move because I was the same with you. I'm like going, Kirk wouldn't actually do that, would he? I mean, he's not the type of person to just sulk and walk away from the crew when they're arguing with him. But then to follow it up. But
that's another thing is like, I got annoyed that they were arguing with him. I'm like, motherfucker, listen. I'm like, holy shit.
I'm James Tiberius Kirk. Fuck off. But then I have to stop and they see the genius of the writers in Strange New Worlds is you follow that up with the scene where he's there and all of a sudden you're going, oh, he's actually strategizing and trying to, he's removing the noise that's around him.
Yeah.
And basically saying, okay, this is what's in front of me. I have to think about the strategy now. What the hell do we do?
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, ultimately makes characters interesting.
Yeah.
So the ideal would be to idealize Kirk, right? That's what I think a lot of fans would want. Well, let's make him look like he is just a natural born talent.
Since day one.
And you can be a natural born talent, but that doesn't mean being a natural born talent doesn't mean you have innate knowledge. That comes from experience, and then that natural talent will manifest itself in different ways. So when I look at the strategy behind what they were attempting to do with Kirk, it shows a Kirk who's not quite where he should be by the time the original series rolls around. Like, this is the beginnings of a person who's still trying to find himself, trying to understand his style of command, and deal with the weight of having the lives of so many on his shoulders, being the sole responsibility. And you have to kind of deconstruct what we know of this character. They did similar things with the Kelvin 2009 Star Trek reboot, where they made Kirk a bit of a fuck up, and I think a lot of people didn't have complaints with that because we all knew that this was an alternate reality where the events didn't really match up 1-to-1. But still, the fact that they showed that Kirk needed to learn to work with others.
Yes.
That was something they were definitely floating within the script, within the subtext of that movie. So it's kind of the same thing, deconstructing the beginnings of a character, things that we thought we knew. Well, this is stage one. This is the beginning. There's no way that he would be just as good and capable as he becomes later down the road. So ultimately, I was very happy with what they did with him. I was not upset. I was very nervous going into this episode just because I knew that this was going to be the episode that focused solely on Kirk. And it did give me some panic attacks prior to watching, just because, David, that would be the end for me. Like, I will tell you this now.
I knew
if they fuck up Captain Kirk, I'm done with Star Trek. Just like I was done with Star Wars when they did certain things, and I'm like, I'm done with it. I just can't do it. These people don't get it anymore, and I'm fucking over it. I'm not going to get mad. You know what I'm going to do? Just not pay attention and watch your shit. And there's one thing, David, that will make me turn away from Star Trek, and it is the destruction of not the deconstruction, the destruction of Captain Kirk. If they fuck him up, I'm fucking done.
That's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why for this past week, this has been my most anticipated, I guess you could say, shows that me and you have done, because after I watched the show, I didn't contact you because I was like, okay, this is the show that basically will either kill it for us or, make us more comfortable with it. And because I kid you not, when I finished the show, I'm like, I could see Mike losing his brain with how they're portraying Kirk. But that's why I had to take a step back and say, okay, why is this portrayal of Kirk like this? And it dawned on me that basically I'm thinking of it as a Star Trek fan. I'm thinking Kirk is like this day one.
Yeah.
And it's not very realistic. It's why
it's no different than the Batman Year One comic. It shows Batman
getting beaten up.
Yeah, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. I mean, he's still talented. He's still Batman, but
it made me think,
he doesn't have the experience.
And it made me think, Mike, because I'm going, fans need to understand. Yes, we idealize these characters, and these characters are they're
iconic,
godlike to us. Where it's like, we expect certain qualities to always be there. But the thing that Strange New Worlds has done, and I took a step back and says, no, this is their playbook.
Yeah.
They build the basis for us to make these characters iconic.
Yeah. Kirk is, I think, the last, I should say the original series in general. The original series crew, but specifically Kirk and Spock, are the last two, and this is not me being a nostalgia baby thinking that things need to be the same as the past. I feel like I think people by now who listen to our show understand that I'm not guided or governed by nostalgia. In fact, I oppose it. However, there are reasons why that all of us can track back to why we started loving something. And for me, it was watching the original series reruns with my mom when I was a kid. Kirk is an important pop culture figure for me and for millions of other people. And he's the last character that was important to our childhood that has not been fucked up yet. And I know that sounds incredibly cynical and just rude, probably.
It's true, though.
But if you look at Luke Skywalker, Harrison Ford's Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, they're all deadbeats. They characterize them as deadbeats. One guy's a quitter and a loser. The other guy ran away from his family and abandoned his child. Lando apparently
sleeps with everything
because they write, this the overly progressive Disney for some reason doesn't realize they're writing racist cliches.
Yes.
Lando has a child, he thinks, someplace. What?
Someplace.
Wow.
And then runs into her just randomly.
Well, we think.
Yes.
Maybe they fixed it in a book or a comic book, but based on the movie alone, we think this is supposed to be his kid. It's not that they didn't do things. It's not even about poor storytelling with some of these characters. It's like, what the fuck? Why would you make these people deadbeats?
It's character assassination.
It's character assassination. And they did it with almost all of our legacy characters in Star Wars. They've done it with I can point to numerous IPs that they've done this with, that long-running IPs. Star Trek, in my opinion, is the last IP that has not been ruined. There has been some hiccups with the Kurtzman era, but it has not been ruined. For the most part, it's been very solid, with a couple seasons here and there of things you're like, you could have done better here. But overall, it's okay. It's good. It's not bad. And they have not assassinated the Captain Kirk we all know and love.
The closest thing you could say that Star Trek, Kurtzman's era of Star Trek almost character assassinated was Picard. With season 1 and season 2.
Pretty fucking close.
They came really damn close to character assassinating Captain Picard, because they portrayed him as this old man who was weak and feeble
And couldn't get anyone to rally behind him. I'm like, what are you doing in this season? What are you doing?
And then Terry Matalas comes in and bitch slaps everybody and says, hey, this is Captain Picard.
Yeah. Dude, if it wasn't for Matalas taking over as showrunner in the second season, I do believe that we would all be having a very different conversation about Star Trek.
Terry Matalas essentially did what, as funny as it sounds, because I remember me and you talking about it, he essentially did what me and you would do to two people in the writing room from Picard season 1, is just walk and go, you're fired. Go away. Yeah. You, shut up.
Yeah.
I'm going to bib slap you. And then like,
I'm going to bib slap you. What's that? Did you say bitch slap or
bitch slap?
Oh, bitch slap. Oh, okay.
But like, that's the thing about, like, I feel today, this is like a discussion that belongs on Critique Revolve with us, where we're talking about why Hollywood can't seem to pay respectable homage to their IPs properly nowadays. Where it's kind of like Star Trek is the one that seems to do it the best, where it's like you have these legacy characters that you would expect, and it shows how jaded we are as an audience. Everyone's critique of in Star Trek in the fan forums is this innate fear that they're going to ruin our characters. Oh my God, why are they bringing in the legacy characters in the Strange New Worlds? Why are they recasting this person? Well, when you take a step back, you say, well, they're recasting him because they want to do more stories with this. You want more stories with Captain Kirk, right? You want more stories with Spock.
See, personally, me, I just never would have gone down that route. If I say this a lot, if I was running Star Trek and not Kurtzman in, 2017, not that I have any big major problems with anything necessarily that he's done. Like I said, a few seasons here and there are a little questionable. But I don't hate watch Star Trek, and nor do I hate Kurtzman. I think he's made some mistakes. But me, if I was put in Kurtzman's position, Dave, and you and I have had these conversations, I never would have even thought about doing a prequel, because I hate prequels. I think they're cop-outs. I think they're easy ways to capitalize on an audience. And I get it. There are economic realities that studios must understand. They have to make decisions based on making money, and the familiar seems to work with people. So I understand this affinity that these studios have with prequels and reboots, and I get it. But I would have chosen to just rely on my writing and write such an amazing show that people would start talking about it and discovering Star Trek who are not even necessarily Star Trek fans. That would have been my strategy, to hire the hardest motherfucking writing room, the hardest writers in the business.
But here's the thing. You have to throw in the caveat that there's something that I've come to really have an epiphany about when it comes to writing for IPs that are very well established. You have to bring in writers who are, just like what you said, hardcore, know what they're doing, and are an excellent writing room, but also have a passion for the IP. Because
I don't know if they need to have a passion for the IP. I disagree with that, but go ahead.
But like my example about that is the parallel between Star Trek and Star Wars. And I know that we've been using that a lot this episode, but when you look at how Star Wars was treated with Last Jedi, with I forgot the filmmaker's name, but
Rian Johnson.
Rian Johnson. When Rian Johnson looks at the character like Luke Skywalker and openly makes fun of Luke crying about Han Solo's death, it shows that he has no inkling of what that character's legacy is.
Yeah.
And then when you get here, you get these writers, especially
with Star Trek.
With Star Trek, especially with this episode, that do subtle things like Kirk goes off into his own mind space, and Spock comes in.
Yeah.
And he's the one that talks to Kirk logically.
Yeah. Those are the subtle differences between what Star Trek's doing right now and what Star Wars is doing.
Yes.
Star Wars, that's a great point of contrast, because you're right. Rian Johnson literally mocked cut a powerful scene because he didn't want Luke crying.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, a man's best friend.
His best friend, who he went to war with.
And relative, showing emotion? Nah. Like, it just shows a fundamental disconnect from the IP. So where you say passion for IP, I always replace passion for understanding.
There you go. That's a better word for it.
Because we have talked about Tony Gilroy, the man that the power behind the Star Wars Andor series, which is amazing. He has said he's never considered himself a huge Star Wars fan. He respects it, he understands it, and he likes it.
There's that word, though.
But he's not a super big fan of Star Wars. And I think that was why we got such a strong series in some regard, is because he's a good writer, and he also is not obsessed with fanisms. Like, your idea of fandom may be very different than my idea of fandom, and your understanding of the fandom might be based on something incredibly different that's disconnected from the understanding of what the stories are about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why fans and someone coming from the fandom doesn't always equate success in adapting something that you love. It's better that you understand your craft, you understand and respect the IP. That, to me, goes a long way. More than just a room filled with a bunch of, you and me. A bunch of people like, oh my God, Star Trek, blah, blah, blah. Like, if I would need someone in there who's not a super big Star Trek fan to counterbalance me.
Yes.
So once again, bringing it back to this episode, it was an incredibly strong episode. It wasn't the best episode, but it was a strong episode. It was very reminiscent in style and tone of the 1960s original series Star Trek, which was obviously the point. Seeing Paul Wesley finally get to be Captain Kirk was a rewarding experience. If you hated it, I feel sorry for you.
I do too.
I don't think you know how to enjoy things. Because just because you may not love everything 100% doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy it.
You don't love yourself.
Yeah, I thought it was incredibly careful. It was careful at the same time. Not to stand on... I mean, when you're standing on the backs of giants, you have to be careful not to fall off and break your neck.
There you go.
And I would probably give this episode, David, this is hard for me, because what it did was solid.
Yeah.
But the script itself had some issues.
It did.
So I'd probably give this like a 90, maybe an 89. You know what? An 89%.
That's hilarious, because I had the same score, 89. Because last episode I was thinking to myself was a 98. I think I gave it a 98.
I think so, yeah.
So I was like this episode was great. It was entertaining and I liked it. But it wasn't as good as last episode, so I flipped the numbers around and basically said 89.
Now,
that sounds right.
If we were giving grades to Paul Wesley's performance, it would be 100%. He did great with the material that was given to him.
Oh yeah, I think Paul Wesley's portrayal of Captain Kirk, particularly in this episode now, really sets a tone and honestly a really nice anticipation for me to see more.
I'm not sure, David, yet who's better. But of course, William Shatner's not in the running. He is Captain Kirk. So you can't compare Captain Kirk to Captain Kirk. But we have 3 versions now, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We have William Shatner's original take, which set how all takes should proceed. And then you have Chris Pine's.
Yes.
And you have Paul Wesley's. I don't know. Between Paul Wesley and Chris Pine, I'm not sure who's better yet.
Well, the cool thing about it,
They are similar, though.
you touch on one thing though. Yes, they are similar, but both Kirks are very different in a lot of ways.
You talking about what as in canon, in a canon sense, like
In a
what
canon
makes
sense,
them who they are?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That Chris Pine's Kirk is based on because of how that movie goes. Pine becomes Kirk because he comes to the realization, oh my God, my destiny is this.
Well, if your experience, this is where philosophy comes in, David, because if your experience is what makes you who you are, and two people who are essentially the same person experience two different histories, then it would make sense that they would be slightly different. Now,
Yes.
you also could look at destiny, which is a part of Star Trek. There is a form of determinism in Star Trek at this point. If you look at that, that's what keeps them similar at this point, is the built-in idea of there is a path for Kirk that he must be on.
The difference between, after I watched this episode, the difference between Pine's Kirk and this Kirk is the fact that this Kirk that we see in this episode does not know his destiny. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what's coming at him. Pine's Kirk, because of the mind meld Spock gives him, knows exactly what happens.
Yeah.
He needs to meet Spock. He needs to meet McCoy. He needs to be on the Enterprise. He cannot leave the Enterprise. And if you think about it, that becomes like the core concept of J.J. Abrams' entire Star Trek is this idea that Kirk becomes obsessed of like, I got to be with my friends. This is my destiny. I got to make sure we all stay together.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I forgot the actor's name just now.
Paul Wesley?
Paul Wesley. Paul Wesley's portrayal of Kirk is more kind of like, okay, this is a more natural Kirk, and he's letting destiny guide him. Like, destiny was the one who basically, suddenly Spock shows up. Suddenly he's stuck with, as funny as it sounds, when he got stuck on that ship with Uhura, Scotty, Chapel, and Spock, I'm like going, okay, it's all the original crew minus some key players.
Yeah. Now, David, just because we have to bring this up and then we got to close out the show. There was a listener, I cannot find it, so I'm going to paraphrase, that took umbrage with a comment I made about Star Trek being largely deterministic. And he said, no, it's about free will. And I'm like, dude, you're not watching the show, bro.
You're not, dude.
I'm like, maybe at some point prior to probably prior to Enterprise, you could say that the characters were in control of their fate. But by the very nature of creating a prequel, you are now saying that certain things must happen. So when you have a story dealing with Archer, he has to become the one who creates the Federation. Why? Because it's been established. Meaning you have now taken away free will in canon away from a character because we know that these events must occur.
You know what I say to a person like that? And he says, no, it's all about free will. You don't know what the greatest Star Trek episode is then. City on the Edge of Forever.
Amazing. Yeah.
That whole thing tells everything is predetermined and must happen.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Star Trek. That episode is not even arguably at this point. Any Star Trek fan that basically looks at me and says, oh, Star Trek's about free will. I'm like going, no. You haven't watched since TOS.
They have a certain amount of free will, I would argue, and maybe we can do a show on this at a later date.
Yeah.
Dave, but they have a margin of free will, but there are large scenarios that must happen. Now, I'm not saying that every character in Star Trek is aware that they have a fate, because then you would remove any optimism and hope from your show. But we as listeners, or I should say fans of Star Trek, viewers and watchers, we understand that there are things that must happen. That means in canon, not meaning non-diegetic, but diegetic. Diegetically speaking, this is no longer a world built on free will. This is a world built on things that must happen. So yeah, that's that. All right, David, solid episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.